So, obviously I would never say, I told you so. But on this show, about 4 weeks ago, we suggested maybe, hey, just maybe, there was a link between the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the virus found in Wuhan. And that maybe this story we were hearing from the Chinese government and the American mainstream media, but I repeat myself, was a little bit of a cover. That maybe this didn't just come from a bad batch of bad soup, but it had something to do with that level 4 viral lab that was just a few hundred yards away. Turns out, increasingly, that seems to be the case. Why on earth, then, was everybody covering up for China? Was it just the money? China buys up a lot of American media. Was it the ideology? The media obviously hate Donald Trump. Or is it the case that people knew about this lab, they knew about the research that was being conducted there, and maybe, even just maybe, the U.S. government was funding the research at the lab? Here's Senator Cruz breaking the news.
Well, it turns out there wasn't just one, there were 2 labs within miles of where this outbreak occurred that were studying coronaviruses from bats, and that there were internal State Department wires before this pandemic raising concerns about the security in those labs and that an accidental virus could escape and cause a global pandemic. But I'll tell you, it's worse than that. And let me give you some breaking news right now, which is the U.S. government was funding the Chinese research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars. And let me give you specifics that we just got today. Today, an inquiring of the National Institutes of Health, did any of your money go to the Wuhan Institute of Virology? The answer is yes. And here's what they told us in writing today. They said in fiscal year 2019, the funding for the Wuhan Institute for Virology was $76,000 and the $301. $76,301.
So you and I and all American taxpayers were spending over $76,000 to fund the research at this laboratory. What research were we funding? Specifically, we were paying the Wuhan Institute of Virology to study viral diversity in bat reservoirs and survey people who live in high-risk communities for evidence of bat coronavirus infection, and to conduct lab experiments to analyze newly discovered viruses. So we were paying them to do all of the research that it seems increasingly likely was the cause of the coronavirus outbreak, that they then lied about for months and caused to spread all the way around the world and shut down the greatest economy ever and throw 22 million Americans out of work and kill another 40,000 at last count Americans. And this is a very bad situation. It also reminds us, I think, of 2 things here. One, politicians, the media, people in government have a lot of incentives here to cover up what really happened. Ton of political incentives, ton of financial incentives. Okay, they have a lot of incentive to call anyone who raises questions wacky, crazy, conspiracy theorist, right? That's what they did. They called Tom Cotton, the senator, a conspiracy theorist because he said maybe the virus has something to do with the laboratory. Now it turns out he was almost certainly right and they were completely wrong. That's one thing. Calls for a little bit of courage when you're standing up there. Calls for maybe not being so condescending to the Liberate America people, who maybe there's actually a good cause to liberate America. That's the first part. Second thing we know is that China lied. They lied from the very beginning, and the U.S. media are helping them do it. So here was a report. It's so insidious how they do it. I was reading the Associated Press yesterday for some reason. Here's the report from the AP. Quote, the U.S. death toll from the novel coronavirus rose to more than 40,000 on Sunday, the highest in the world, and almost double the number of deaths in the next highest country, Italy, according to a Reuters tally. So that's not true. Listen to how silly this is. The novel coronavirus, they won't call it the Chinese coronavirus, they won't call it the Wuhan coronavirus. It's the novel coronavirus. Death toll rose to 40,000, the highest in the world. It's not the highest in the world. The only way that the U.S. has the highest death count in the world from this is if China is giving honest numbers. We know China's not giving honest numbers. You can see the growth of the virus in every single country. Looks like this. And it goes up, 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 and then eventually it kind of levels off. Here's how it looked in China. It starts to go up, 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 then it levels, and then it just completely crashes down because they stopped reporting the numbers, because they lied. By the way, you don't need to believe me on that. Even the Chinese government is beginning to admit some of their lies. They say the death count out of Wuhan was not accurate. They increased it just a few days ago by more than 50%, and that's still nowhere near enough to get to an actual honest number. So it is simply a fact that the U.S. does not have more coronavirus deaths than any other country in the world. China does. But let's even say that we could move past that. They then write, this Reuters tally says that the United States has almost double the number of deaths in the next highest country, Italy. What they fail to mention is that the United States is more than 5 times bigger than Italy. Population, more than 5 times as large. So if the U.S. has double, then that's not nearly as bad as Italy, right? Because you're not interested in the total number of deaths, you're interested in per capita deaths. That's a much more meaningful statistic. So this is the one silver lining, I would say, about the coronavirus. It's exposing the mainstream media. Obviously, you can look at reports like that and just say, this is so absurd. It's also taking away a lot of the mainstream media's power of persuasion. Dan Crenshaw, U.S. Congressman, former Navy SEAL, he showed this the other night on the Bill Maher show. You know, all of the talk shows are still going on. All the late night shows, all the talk shows, the news shows, they're still going on, but most of them are being filmed in people's homes. So Bill Maher has his show, but he doesn't have his audience. He doesn't have his applause sign. He doesn't have all of the majesty that goes along with a TV show. So it's just him in front of a camera. And then it's Dan Crenshaw in front of a camera. And without all of those props to help Bill Maher seem like he's being the persuasive one, Dan Crenshaw just wrecks him. Without all of the props that allow the liberal media to make it seem like the liberal position is always correct and the conservative position is ridiculous, the conservative position shines through. Just take this one example of Bill Maher going after President Trump for coronavirus and Dan Crenshaw smacking it down.
Peter Navarro, somebody else who talks to Trump a lot, told him directly January 29th, you got to get ahead of this. February 10th.
2 days later, he implemented a restrictive travel ban from China, which he was widely criticized for. That same day, on January 31st, Nancy Pelosi proposed the No Ban Act, which would be congressional limitation on what President Trump's actually able to do with that travel restriction.
Okay, but he lies about that. First of all, didn't.
How does he lie about it? What do you mean?
He said he stopped people coming in from China. He did not. He said he was ahead of it. 43 countries did it before we did. There are still people coming in from China. He only stopped foreign nationals.
Yeah, okay, let me address that, because I know that's what people are saying right now. But the reality is, it was about 40,000 people came in after that. These were U.S. citizens and green card holders and passport holders being repatriated. U.S. citizens. So you have to make the argument then that we shouldn't allow them in. And I mean, it sounds to me like you're fully agreeing with President Trump on this when everybody else disagreed with him. And if you're saying that you wish that travel restriction had been more extreme, okay, fine. I mean, you apparently had the foresight back then, but when nobody else did. But the fact is, if Joe Biden was in charge at that moment, he's already said he wouldn't have done it. He criticized it at the time. Nancy Pelosi actually proposed legislation to stop it.
Okay, so, but people are still coming in from China. It wasn't just foreign nationals, but let's get off that. Let me just go back to the timeline for a minute.
Let's get off of that because Uncle, stop it, Dan. This hurts too much. Stop smacking me down. Now, if they had done that in Bill Maher's studio, he would have had the audience and the lights and the camera and the close-up on his face, and he'd kind of smirk or something, and the audience would drown out Crenshaw with his cheers. But because it's just these two people, it's just the arguments. And obviously the conservative argument is much stronger here. I really like this. This really is a silver lining. If the left loses all of their institutional aids to pretending to be more persuasive, to propping up their weak arguments, then we're going to do a great job at persuading the American people. This is why President Trump is holding daily press briefings. He's holding daily press briefings because it is the Crenshaw-Bill Maher moment, right? It's not NBC News at night with the lights and the cameras and the editors and everything designed to make Trump look bad. It's just the reporter and it's Trump. And when you get a fair fight and it's one-on-one and it's live, Trump wins. When it's edited and it's later at night and they can chop it up and make it look bad, then the media win. Same thing here. We should all, I don't think conservatives should ever do a pre-taped interview again. I think we only live interviews from now on because we win every single one of those. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, and really, even if you didn't, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our content.